Welcome back to our series on data analytics and AI visualization and dashboarding tools. The past two videos we looked at Microsoft's Data Formulator and Plotly Studio. Today we're going to check out Apache Superset. So Apache Superset is an open source modern data exploration and visualization platform. It's fast, lightweight, intuitive, runs in the browser, and helps you visualize data by connecting to different SQL databases or SQL databases. It's got a semantic layer that helps you extract the information from your SQL databases and then uses caching to load the dashboard and the charts intuitively. It's got a bit of a no-code drag and drop environment, but also has some SQL on the back end that you can customize your data sets and customize your charts a little bit. Now, there are a few ways you can go about setting this up. I think the easiest way to do it is to clone the GitHub repository and then have Docker Desktop load the Docker Compose file. Now, there's an additional step you need to do here, and that's to edit the secret key in the configuration file or the Docker Compose file, and then you'll be up and running. Now it's time to connect our data. We're going to use that same WI data CSV file that we're using before, and we're going to load it in through their upload CSV to database. You can also connect a SQL database. You can also connect Google Sheets. There's many different possibilities here with Apache Superset. So I've got the WDI CSV loaded. Now that we have our data set loaded, I'll just show you quickly how easy it is to get a dashboard up and running. So hit New Dashboard. Okay. And it's going to bring me to this page, and I'll just call it WDI Test Dashboard. And ask me if I want to create new charts. But if we go to this layout elements, I can put in, let's go do a header at the top here, and we'll call it Asian Debt Dashboard, because that's what we're going to look at today, similar to the other ones. And we'll add in a couple different rows here to follow how our layout is going to be. So at the top, we'll have some KPI metrics. In the middle, we'll have a bit of a time series chart. And then the bottom, we'll have a couple different charts. We'll probably want to put a column divider in here as well. That looks good. Put 3 columns. We'll probably put 2 columns here. And I think we can make these bigger, if I recall. We'll put a divider in between here, and a divider in between here, and a divider at the top here. So that looks pretty good. That's how easy it is to get up and started. If I want to change the background, if I want to change the font, and we'll switch back to light here, just to make it easier to see everything. So if I want to change the background here, I can do that. And I'm curious where the styling is. Okay, here we go, yeah. So it's a little bit nested and maybe a little bit not intuitive in terms of where to go to update the styling. But once you figure it out, this is all using CSS, and hypothetically, yeah, you can load your own template or write your own CSS. And so that's kind of convenient and kind of nice. Now I'm not sure exactly what this applies to. So you'd have to do a little bit of digging to see on the dashboard exactly what this is and where you're applying it. For instance, if I do H2, color, FFF, just to make it white, is it going to recolor this? I don't think so, because I'm not sure exactly what this element is. And it doesn't seem to tell you. No. Anyhow, time to first output, fairly quick, fairly easy to get up and going. Learning curve for basic tasks. Now, when I first played with this, it took me a little bit to figure out where to go, so I'm going to give this a 3. You'll see what I mean when I start building the charts, because the layout elements are a little bit easy, but once I build the charts with our data set, so maybe I'll just show you here quickly. We have our, somewhere, WDI data set, and it gives you some featured charts, so let's just pick one. So maybe let's just do a heat map, because that is one thing we want to implement. And on the x-axis, we want to have country. On the y-axis, we want to have indicator name. And then the metric we're going to look at is 2023 sum. And we're also going to filter for is not null for nulls. I think that looks good. Normalize crest. No, we want to normalize across. We'll save this chart as heat map of debt and save. If we go back to our dashboard here, now we should see our chart. If we reload this. Back, we can see it's inputted in this graph. So fairly easy to get a hang of, I would say, at least for simple things. We were able to put this graph together pretty easily, throw it into a dashboard, lay it out. And we can change some of the colors if we want to. If we go to edit chart, in customize here, we can change this. We'll do it more traditional. Legend type continuous. Show values. Normalize looks a little bit better. Save and go to dashboard, and you can see it's updated. So fairly simple, fairly simple. Now here's where things get a little bit iffy. If we want to go in and we want to customize our data set a little bit, I'm going to click here. I'm going to go to the WDA data set that I created. And this is the standard how our data set loads in from that CSV file. It's a little bit confusing in terms of how to actually use the no-code environment to get what you want out of here. And so if I can just give you an example, let's say we want to create a table that shows the average of debt across all these years. It's not so simple. It's not so simple. Total debt, not total debt, debt to GDP. Where is it? Central government debt, percent of GDP. That looks good. And this is kind of where the drag and drop comes in, but I find this a little bit annoying. I don't want to have to drag and drop all my columns. I'd rather just select them. And there you can see, now we have kind of what we're looking for. And if we filter by the countries that we're looking for, again, I can't set them, but I do have a custom SQL query to do this. And we want this to be country code in. All right, so now we have our country. We'll just organize this back here. The whole point of doing this was to kind of emphasize that manipulating the data in this no-code view is not that easy and not that nice. Whereas if we go to SQL Lab, this gives us some more. I'll do the WI data. Let's just say I want to select all the ASEAN data. Like, that's much easier to do. Now I've already written the SQL query, but it's not very difficult. Basically, we're selecting the columns that we want for the past 6-7 years. Drop it, and we're going to pull all this information. Now I could also reduce this by debt, but I do want to look at everything. And this limits our data set, so we're not loading in all the data. Now this is really easy to do by SQL, but it's a little bit more difficult to do when we try and edit it with that no code area. Trying to select all the different country codes and then everything is not null and then get the specific country columns is not as intuitive as you think it would be. Now another thing we really want to do here is we want to modify our data set so we can have a year column so we can do some time analysis. But because of how our data set is right now, where the columns are the years, we have to melt or unset the data columns so that they become a column itself, and the rows for each data become a new row. So for every year, for every data point, for every indicator code, for every country, it becomes a new row. However, if I go back to data sets here, and I'll just select our Asian data set, which has the years. Not so easy to create a table like this. Okay, edit the data set that we're working with so we don't have to go over and do this again. Country code in country code in country code. Oh, don't want that twice. Awesome. This looks a lot better. Okay, great. So now we have a more fixed data set. Again, I don't know how you would go about doing this in that no code area. It's just way too complex. And so this tool isn't quite as simple. It's not as user-friendly or democratized as some of the other tools we've looked at so far. It's definitely more robust, maybe deeper BI analysis, data analysis for those who are familiar with SQL already. But if you compare it to like Plotly Studio, where it basically calculated this all for you, and you could prompt it in plain text to get this out with some issues and some errors, definitely some data issues as we discovered in that video. So this is a little bit more powerful, a little bit more in-depth, a little bit more controlled because you can see what's happening, but also requires a little bit better, deeper skill set. And we'll just call it, and you can see now we have this data set. And if we want to go and create charts off this, we can do so. What we're going to do is now we have our data set, we're going to create some of those KPI metrics that the metric we want is value, sum. Yes, we want sum because we want that to have as a filter. We're going to do indicator as debt, central government debt, total percent of GDP. And we want year as a column in 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. By selecting them all, what we can do is then we can go filter it later. But we want our chart to be able to have this. I forgot to put country in countries as well. I probably could have hit select all here. Make it easy to click off this. Awesome, update chart. And then we just have a big number here, P, and we'll add this to our dashboard. Let's save, we'll go to dashboard. Here, we can just bring this up here. I want to make this a little bit smaller. That looks good. I'll make this 2 columns. That looks good. Click Add or Edit Filters option in Settings to create new dashboard filters. I don't see it. Filters are currently added. Click Add or Edit Filters in option in Settings to create new dashboard filters. Why do I not? Oh my God. It's right here. This is the settings. Settings is up here, but they mean this little setting. No. Chart customization. Oh my God, finally. Dynamic group by defaults, sort filter values. We actually don't want this. Yes, cancel. We do want to add a filter though. Add or edit filters. Oh my gosh, finally. Value, WDI. GDP, we want to select country, filter name, country. Right, this is a little bit better, but we should be able to add this filter here too. Like, I don't want it to be a global filter. It'd be nice to have the filter on here. Well, that's also weird. I can't actually change the color of this. I can only add a solid background to it. Like, it's so weird that I can't change the color of this. Like, that did nothing. Styling, CSS. As we've just seen, the data analysis and exploration is pretty good. You can get quite detailed analysis in here, and you can select different data sets to be able to dive deeper into some of the numbers and more specifically, and then add some filters to do so. It's pretty good, except for the fact that you still need SQL to really get what you want out of it. If we go and add charts without really having that ability to dive deeper, now that we have our years, which we would have had before, we can create these line charts or these big numbers with the trend lines. But before, we wouldn't have been able to do that. And if I select our data set here, that's not the one we wanted. Where is it? This. And on the x-axis, we put year. And on the y dimensions, we add countries, and metrics, we add values. And filters, we're going to do indicator name, and we're going to do central government debt, percentage GDP. That's weird that didn't show up in the heat map, because I did have it there. Right, so we can get an idea of here of how central government debt as a percentage GDP is trending. You can see for most countries it's increasing. So this is a nice graph. Let's add this to our dashboard. Over time. So we've got a time series graph. We've got table, heat map. What I'm going to do is add in a map and show you what I like and do not like about it. So we'll create a new chart. We'll do world map. And we'll select our data set. Create a new chart, country column. We'll do country. Right, so already this is not going to work. We'll try full name. Metric, we'll do value, sum. Yeah, we'll do sum. Change that to average. Filters, we'll do indicator in GDP per capita. And you can see it gives us this world map, but because we're only looking at a specific area, we're just not getting anything worthwhile here. And you can see it's only done, it's not mapping every country. So we've got Philippines, we've got Malaysia, Indonesia. Well, where's Singapore down here? We don't have Singapore. Cambodia, Thailand, Myanmar. Singapore's here, but I can't see it on the map, right? Because it's not mapped by country name. The country name is not in here, but whatever. So if we go save, add to our dashboard, map of GDP per capita. This one we want a little bigger. Well, there's no ability to edit this to zoom in to show where it is on the chart. That's very annoying, because then if we're only looking at the subset of countries, it's so hard to see this. Let's see if we drill to detail. No. Drill to detail, 60 rows. Yeah, there's no ability to modify this, edit chart. Like, I couldn't figure out edit chart properties, configuration, cache timeout, advanced, general settings. Like, there's no way to reset where this is. Okay, so it seems like a good time to dive into the documentation. See what the documentation's like, see if we can figure out how to edit this map. So if we search country map visualization, actually, is that what we want? List, you have to edit the files. In Superset UI, legacy plugin chart country map. So this is similar to what I've done in Plotly before with GeoJSON. But this would require us going into Docker and editing the file. Yeah, I don't think there's a way to drill down on that map. Async queries. The documentation is pretty basic, just basic stuff. Like here's how to create a calculated column. But when I try and run some SQL queries to actually do these calculated columns beyond, okay, cast sales as integer. Like if I want to get, yeah, when I try and do some more specific customized charts, it doesn't seem to run as I expect. Right? This says, okay, metrics, sum sales. Sum sales by date. I would really like to see more specific documentation around some of the charts, which I don't see. Let's go to community resources. Let's go to GitHub. Because it would be nice to know how to manipulate that map a little bit. Okay, GitHub doesn't seem to be loading. Superset, Stack Overflow. Yeah, okay, this is what I was looking for. Apache country, Superset country map design. Create a country map, chart and dashboard. I've prepared, I show 6 provinces. What I want you to do is zoom in on the 6 that I show. So let's see. So I don't think people have figured this out. Central government debt, GDP over time. This should be, let's add in a second column here. Can I add a second column? No. We're going to do this. We're going to add a second column here. We're going to put this in here. Oh, no. We want this over here. We're going to put this in here. We're going to do that. Like this. And let's just add in a couple more charts. Add chart. Now that we have a dashboard put together, it's okay. We still can't zoom on the map, but we've got some charts, some more typical charts that you see, some KPI metrics here, a heat map showing the debt and GDP growth, kind of identifying over where the areas are, the critical areas. Let's test out some of the other features of Apache Superset here that are going to be critical for our use. So one thing we want to look at here is, can we share? So something nice here, we have a permanent link to the clipboard, and we can share a link by email. We can set up an email report. So if we wanted this to refresh automatically and maybe send to our director or the C-suite so they get an email in their inbox every week or every morning, we could set up an automated report. So let's kind of see what that looks like. Set up a weekly report, description every week, Monday, screenshot width. Pixels, I think we're okay. The report has been created. Another critical area we want to look at is the user management within Apache Superset and the permissions you can grant to different users. And so if we go to the documentation here and look at security configurations, roles, you can actually change these roles in the MD file. For now, it gives you a set of a few different types of roles and change the different access to different roles, as well as the ability to execute SQL functions, which is going to be important for different security features. You can customize the permissions. And so if we just go into here and take a look at our settings, you can see list users. We have an admin here. And if we wanted to add more users, and we can define users, we can define different roles for that user, and roles we can assign different permissions. Great. Looks pretty good. Has some built-in security features. Row level security is going to be important. If you have a bunch of different data sets and you want to limit access to different groups or different people, this is going to be really important. So for instance, let's say payroll. If you had payroll data in here and you only wanted finance to be able to look at payroll or accounting, then you could separate that with the department in a different group. I've gone ahead here and I've created a role for a finance manager, and I'm just going to show you how we can add that to a finance group really quick. So we'll call this finance team. We'll give them an alpha role. Users, manager, finance. It's as simple as that. And you can have a team on finance. You can have different users selected to that group. And now this will enable me to set up that automated email to this particular person. Now that we have our user set up for Finance Manager and we have our report created to send weekly, we need to add one more step that's going to enable the Finance Manager to also receive the report. If we go to settings here and we look at our alerts and reports, we can see our report is set up here. And if we click the edit button, notification method, we can see it's by email and our email recipients here. And if we wanted to add a recipient, we would type in we called it manager.finance@company.com. We could also CC or BCC if we wanted to send it to ourselves and not show the manager or somebody else. And we're going to save that. Awesome. Now we have a report to be set up to take a snapshot every single week. So this gets a fairly good mark. I would give this a 5. I think they've thought about pretty much everything here. All in all, it looks like the security is pretty good within Apache Superset, and it's quite configurable. Now we don't have an extremely large data set, and I don't have it connected to an extremely large data set, so it's a little bit difficult to get an idea of how quickly the queries are going to run. But just as an example, I have the Docker container up here on the right to show you the resource usage. And then I have a couple queries here that aren't so complicated, but they're more typical queries that you would probably run to give you an idea of how quick they run. So the first one is our melting of the data set, where we take all the year columns and we put them as a row. And you can see this takes less than a second to run. Fairly quick. How many rows we have? Around 4,000 rows. So not a big data set, really. And same thing here, if we just want to take the average of the years instead, you can see, takes no time to run. Now, part of this reason is these calculations are so quick is kind of the back end and what Superset is using here. So it's got Redis set up with Postgres. So that semantic layer handles a lot of these common queries fairly easily once people start using them more often. And it stores and caches some of these responses. So when I first ran this, it took a fraction of a second longer, but now because that response is already stored, it takes no time at all. And this is pretty common as you have multiple users working on things. You'll find the queries are fairly similar, and it'll also reduce the cost of having to query the database. We're not really set up here to test the scalability, but just a quick Google search gives you an idea of how easy it is to scale this for larger organizations that may want to implement this themselves. You can see it suggests using load balancing with multiple instances on different servers, so you can distribute the resources across the different servers. So it looks like there are some solutions to improve it. And finally, cost and licensing. Because this is open source, it gets a 5. As you would suspect, it integrates nicely with all the Apache products. So you can see just a quick Google search will give you many tutorials on how to use Airflow and Kafka and Druid to create real-time streaming dashboards in Superset. When it comes to the associated costs, this is really going to depend on the size of your data set, the number of users you want to integrate, and how often you want this to update. You can run this locally for fairly cheap, or you could do it on AWS for fairly cheap. I would say it's fairly cost effective, many solutions. And then if you need to scale it for an enterprise solution or a number of users, or let's say you're selling something and you want people to be able to access it, then you're going to start to run into some larger costs. You're going to have to think about multiple servers and load balancing and all that jazz. Overall, Apache Superset performed quite well. And that's something we would expect from a tool that's been around for 5-6 years. It's had multiple iterations. It's had lots of community support and development ever since it entered the Apache Incubator program. Now it's a more developed tool that's used by many teams worldwide, though there's still some issues with it. And I think more so for those who are lacking some SQL experience and no ability to really move from that no code to more technical coding environment. Perfect for a DevOps team or maybe a data engineer who wants to do some exploration and data visualization or send out some automated reports. Similar for a data analyst who does have some SQL background and querying capability. But for beginner analysts, I think they're going to find this quite challenging unless they have a team behind them to be able to set up some data sets and some filters and custom queries and also some analytical functions that are going to enable them to utilize the dashboard to its potential to actually get some insights out of it. If we compare with Plotly Studio, we can see the score is slightly higher. And Plotly Studio did have some great advantages. Obviously, we love Plotly's visualizations and the customizability. And as a no-code platform, it performed fairly well, but it's kind of the opposite. It doesn't have that rigor. It doesn't have that deep SQL querying capability that Apache Superset has. So kind of two alternatives, one for maybe more prototyping, another one for more serious analytical back-end work where you actually want to showcase your data and you have larger data sets, maybe a data warehouse setup, more integration capabilities without having to rely on Plotly to actually do that for you or that ecosystem for you. And it's open source, 100%. We love that. Stay tuned for our next video in the series. We're either going to look at KNIME or Metabase, I believe they're called, or Redash. Those are the tools that are coming up next. We can help. Find links in the description for more information. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.